There's so many absurd tenets in my profession, and one of them is a calorie. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a unit measure of heat. It doesn't tell you what your body does with whatever you ate. Earlier you talked about nutrient-dense foods, and so that's the conversation, not the calorie. I mean, the calorie is not even a half lie; is a full lie.
Welcome back to Decentralized Radio, your one-stop shop for education on how you can take back control of your health and your wealth, and live outside of the centralized systems that are plaguing our society. We're hosting industry experts every Tuesday live and also releasing podcasts Friday morning. Welcome back, everyone. This will be our last talk before lunch, so we'll try not to linger on too long, but it's an exciting conversation with Dr. Francisco Gutierrez, who is a medical doctor, a decentralized healthcare practitioner. He runs Solimar Direct Health, and we're going to kind of get into a little bit of health optimization and decentralized medicine here. So, Dr. Francisco, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's amazing to be here.
So for you, I guess maybe we can start with Solimar Direct Health. What does that mean? Why did you choose that name for your company, for your practice?
So Solimar in Spanish means sunlight, and Mar means ocean or water. So Solimar Solimar, we named it Solimar because that is the tripod of health and life is sunlight, water, and magnetism from the earth. That's the tripod. Now, I wasn't taught that. I had to go through a very specific journey that took me 17 years to learn that. And I don't know if you want me to go into that a little bit. So I'm actually from El Salvador, so I know many of you know of El Salvador. But I went to medical school in El Salvador, and I came to train here, allopathic medicine in New York City. So my specialty is in internal medicine. And I went to work within the conventional system, started as a private attendant in the year 2000. So I built a very large and thriving practice within the conventional system. And then 6 years after that happened, I woke up with a stroke inside. And at the time I was a squash state champion. Squash is a very intense racket sport. I thought I ate healthy. I didn't, but I was eating, looking at my calories the way they tell you. I was a doctor, and then I had a stroke. So how does that happen? So then, I was 40 pounds heavier at the time. And then that was kind of like the catalyst for me to question. Either I didn't pay attention in class, or there was something that they didn't teach me in medical school. So that started a journey that took me literally 17 years. First, I learned that I didn't know a lot about nutrition because they don't teach that in medical school. And we can talk about why that is if you want. But and then I started investigating more because that was a big piece of the puzzle. But then I started learning about the field of quantum biology. Specifically, I got wind of Dr. Cruz. This was in 2012. And then at the very beginning, I didn't understand what he was saying. I thought he was crazy because he was talking about electrons in a way that I had never thought of. So then I started doing my due diligence, and he recommended to read certain books. One of them is Dr. Pollack's book, which I read. And then finally started to make sense. And I learned about mitochondria, what the mitochondria are. They're not the powerhouse of the cell. They're way more than that. Certainly, they're the antennas that transform the energy from outside into the energy that we can actually use. But none of that actually gets transmitted in the conventional medical system. So I was struggling with now my new knowledge, and then COVID hit. And once COVID hit, I was at the front lines because I was working at an urgent care, primary care practice. And then I came down with COVID. This is before the vaccines, and this was like the initial, not the second wave. And then as I was convalescing, and it was kind of hard because a co-medical school student, colleague of mine, who's a very prominent ICU doctor in Houston, he died from COVID. So I didn't know if I was going to die. So anyway, so I was convalescing, and then at that time I decided, you know what, I can't go back to work for a system that wants me to do the 2Ps, the pillar of the procedure, when I know this perspective. So I didn't know what I even considered retiring and do something different. So, but then I got wind of the first layer of decentralization, which is called direct primary care or direct health, which is basically a business model whereby doctors provide medical services not through the insurance industry, but in a direct way. So it's a membership or subscription type practice. And that allows you many things. It allows you unlimited visits with the physician. It allows you, access basically to the physician, services that are covered by the membership, no copays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's one layer, but that wasn't enough to be decentralized. So the decentralization came when I designed a program based on the principles of mitochondrial health and circadian biology, where I applied it with my patients to see if I could actually help them, if I could actually reverse diabetes. I guess I can't make that claim, but I can because I have the results, so I can show them hypertension, autoimmune diseases like lupus, etc. So lo and behold, it works. So now that we started it in July 2021. So we're up to 500 members. I also do one-off consults, and we have a plethora of patients with significant results, people that we've been able to take off insulin, blood pressure medications, or simply people that we're just watching them to make sure that we prevent them from getting to a point where if they go to a different doctor, they're going to threaten them with medication.
That's incredible. I mean, inspirational, I think. What, I guess the key takeaways at a high level for people, like what is the decentralized health practices that you're recommending? We don't need to get too deep, but maybe at the high level, because the way I think about it is health can be free and accessible to everyone. That's really the point of decentralized health. You don't need to pay a lot of money for expensive things. Maybe, paying slightly more for higher quality food, cooking it yourself, but sunlight, like getting your feet on the ground, having real connections and avoiding toxins doesn't cost a ton of money. How do you define the core principles of what you're practicing and what you're recommending to your patients?
I like to say that our perspective, and by the way, if I have to prescribe a medication for an acute episode or do a procedure, I do it. I mean, it's not like I'm totally against pharma. I'm just saying that there are our bodies are like a diamond and we have different faces. So there are different perspectives where we can accomplish health. So I like to define our perspective that we use the technology of nature to get you better. I guess that would be one way of looking at it. And what does that mean? So if you think about it, we are, as a nation, becoming sicker and sicker and sicker. And they tell you, oh, well, it's because you don't exercise or you eat too many calories. And that's ridiculous. I mean, there's so many absurd tenets in my profession, and one of them is a calorie. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a unit measure of heat. It doesn't tell you what your body does with whatever you ate. Earlier you talked about nutrient dense foods, and so that's the conversation, not the calorie. I mean, the calorie is not even a half lie; is a full lie. So that is the things that we sort of like emphasize. So our program really, the first thing that we do is we focus on the circadian rhythms and body clock, right? Because that was a Nobel Prize in medicine and physiology in 2017. So there's a lot of science to this. So this is all scientific. It's all published. It's Nobel Prize level stuff. So one of the ways that the modern life technology or the modern environment affects our health is through the desynchronization of our circadian clock. And what does that mean? When you get too much non-native EMFs or too much blue light, especially at night, your body clock desynchronizes. And if you don't see the sun enough, then it can't reset. And the body clock is basically the master director of the symphony that is metabolism. I've heard that there are 100,000 biochemical reactions per cell per second, and we have 37 trillion cells. So that needs to have some sort of control. And if it's not controlled, then chaos is going to ensue. And then that is inflammation. That is a problem. So what we do is basically we teach our patients three very simple things. Get out with the sun, ground it if you can. I see a lot of people getting sun and grounded, and I love that. By the way, these shoes are grounding shoes, so don't, just so you know. That and the number two is darkness at night, because melatonin is the master repair hormone, and it has to come out at night. It's not the sleep hormone; it's the hormone of darkness. At least for this purpose, it does other things also in the mitochondria, but for this purpose, it helps repair whatever mess metabolism did during the day. So that needs to be set. The second way of doing it is through grounding, because we're meant to collect energy through electrons, through the magnetic flux of the earth, and that informs the hypothalamus what time of the day it is and what season of the year it is. And the third thing is the timing of the food. That entrains our peripheral clocks. And that's also important, because when you think about it, we're taught to eat at any time of the night or the day. And it's been clearly shown that if you eat late at night, your metabolism works totally different than if you eat during, at the appropriate time. So those are the three things that we teach as a foundation. On top of that is the type of food, and how I define food. Real food is food that is made by sunlight, water, and magnetism, or the animal that ate what it's supposed to eat through the sunlight, water, and magnetism through the plant that they ate. Okay, and then on top of that is exercise. I think there's a lot of confusion about exercise. When I had my stroke, I couldn't exercise I couldn't have been exercising anymore, and I still came down with the stroke. And the reason why is because I didn't have my body clock set right, and I didn't eat correctly. I ate at all times. It didn't matter.
This podcast is brought to you by our lead sponsor, EMR Tech. EMR Tech manufactures high-quality, high-powered red light therapy devices. In my opinion, red and infrared light are two of the biggest nutrient deficiencies in our modern society due to our indoor lifestyles. Red light therapy devices, like the ones from EMR Tech, can help combat that by providing high-powered red light while being indoors. I personally use mine every morning and every evening. Red and near infrared light is extremely beneficial for energy production in our body because it boosts mitochondrial function and penetrates deep into the cell. It is also extremely beneficial for skin health, eye health, as well as our circadian rhythms. And this is actually pretty much why I bought everyone in my family an EMR Tech red light therapy device for Christmas. EMR Tech panels are low flicker, low EMF, and use targeted wavelengths such as 830 and 630 nanometers, amongst others, to get extremely effective results. For more information, go to emrtech.com and use our code DRadio10 for 10% off your order. That's emrtek.com with our code DRadio, DRADIO 10 to save at checkout.
So that's kind of like a 10,000-foot view of what we do. And we use in the office, we use blood tests, but we also use a body composition machine where it tells us how much fat you have and where the fat is, because it's important to know. And then we use that. It's a infrared camera, really, and we use it because it allows us to follow people, once every month without having to incur more costs and having blood tests and be invasive and et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation list. I think that's why this conference is outside, if you didn't know that already. So why is this not, or when do we lose the train of this being the foundation for health? Because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people just did these things right, without consciously thinking about it. They're outside all the time. They went to sleep with the sun and woke up with the sun, ate real food. It was obviously processed food wasn't really ubiquitous and available back then. I mean, grocery stores weren't. But how do we veer so far off from this? And what do you think were the major inflection points to get there?
Well, it's a lot in there, but without being into conspiracy theories or anything, but I think what happens is my profession, unfortunately, is full of half truths that become full lies. To quote Dr. Cruz, I think in terms of food, I think the calorie has made a tremendous harm, because when you look at food in energy as an energy source based on calories, then you're in danger of eating things that you're not supposed to be eating. So the example I give my patients is, a gallon of gasoline has 30,000 calories, and 10 pounds of coal has 30,000 calories, but you wouldn't put 10 pounds of coal in a Ferrari engine. And you say, well, why not? It's cheaper. Well, because it's not supposed to run on coal. Well, yeah, so why are we eating potato chips? It's the same idea. It doesn't have, it's not the fuel that we're meant to consume. So that is what, through the Industrial Revolution and through now, big agriculture, I'm not too familiar with that, but I know the consequences that it has on health. When you think on those terms, then you can make that mistake. The other big mistake, and that's the big elephant in the room, that we have never considered, was when we electrified the night. So before, I forget what, the 1879 Chicago Warfare, when Tesla lit up the night, our environment has been electropolluted exponentially more and more and more and more, without even studying what harm that could do to our bodies. So, and then more recently, in the name of saving money, now at least in the early days, we had incandescent light with full spectrum light frequencies, and now we even got rid of those. And just because we want to save some money, it's the same idea that we were talking about with regenerating farming. I mean, you're going to pay, you're going to save money now to pay the big pharma later, basically. Now, I've heard it that this is done on purpose. I want to be more kind because that's my nature. I think that all these technological advances are good in one sense, and they had unintended consequences. What I can say now is that we know now that what the unintended consequences are, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, I think the whole climate energy efficiency narrative has taken over areas that people don't even realize. So the incandescence, the glass in the windows as well, anything that's altering the input signal from nature is altering how our biology is interpreting it. And the way I think about it is we're just designed, our biology has been designed over hundreds of thousands of years, all biology, millions of years, for this environment outside, without any filters, without any kind of distortion of those input signals. So when your patients are implementing these tactics, like what does that look like? What is a typical progression, and how are they doing this in a modern lifestyle? Because I'm sure everyone would want to be outside all day and, maybe just run around and live in the woods. I know I do, but we have jobs, we have to be indoors. So what are some good tips or good ways people are implementing these practices and connecting with nature in a modern world here in 2024?
It's very difficult for some people, because some people, I take all comers, so I have people that do night shift, and they're particularly vulnerable. So one strategy with them is, okay, so ideally you should find another job, but that's not really practical for most people. But one simple thing that I tell them is to protect themselves at night with blue blockers, if they can. I mean, they're an airline pilot. Well, that's not a good idea, but and I also am very specific with them what they can. Ideally, they would not eat anything, even if they're working. Not eat anything after 7 p.m., even if they're working. But if they have to eat something, it has to be something totally void of any carbohydrates, because the reality is that we've been fed the idea that cholesterol is a bad guy and this and that and the other thing. The real final common pathway, as far as I can tell, is that we have too much insulin, and that's the root cause of where pretty much everything flows, everything bad flows when we have too much insulin resistance and too much insulin. There are many ways you can get there. You can get there through a bad diet, but what most people don't know is that you can get there through too much artificial light, particularly at night. That's why these people have several orders of magnitude more chances of cancer, particularly prostate, colon, and breast cancer, and diabetes five times more, because we're not meant to be bathed in blue light at 2 o'clock in the morning. So when you are in that environment, if you're going to eat some carbohydrate that wants to stimulate insulin secretion from the pancreas at that time, then you're in for a atomic bomb, because that what that does is over time that's going to perpetuate the insulin resistance, and the system's going to break. So that's one strategy if you work at night. Then I just tell them, if you live, it doesn't matter where you live, but if you can just wake up with the sunrise, even if you don't have any grass, but if there's some concrete, just go out there for 5 minutes and look at the sunrise. That's very important. The beauty of our bodies is that we don't need that much unless you're sick. If you have like multiple sclerosis or some autoimmune disease or cancer, then the perspective is a little bit more, a lot more, strict. But for to be healthy, just to respect our body clocks and do these little things. Like, for example, I'm excited to start using Angen's computer, because I think that's going to be a game changer. We've been able to reverse diabetes just by people using blue blockers. Now, can you imagine if we actually have a device that doesn't actually emit blue light? So anyway, so these are kind of like tips that we can implement.
So your practice is like membership based. Is this like a common theme? I'm thinking of like, how do we proliferate this to other areas and other practitioners? Because I see a big problem in general, right? We tell everyone to, focus on getting outside, connecting with the earth, eating real food, and all of a sudden everyone's going to be a lot healthier, not spending money on medicine. And I don't think this is going to catch on in the centralized world. So I'm curious, do you think your method is the best way for other practitioners to do this? What else is coming forward? Because it's hard to find healthcare providers, practitioners who are credible, but then also more decentralized and open to working with nature and not against it, but still understanding the need in dire situations to use the traditional system.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in a couple of ways. One is the business model. So a lot of doctors don't know of the model in certain pockets of the country. If you go to Florida, half of the doctors are direct primary care practices because of the lack of access through the insurance-based systems. So that's one thing. I think the membership type model, and you show them how you can actually make a buck, basically, and it's really a no-brainer, because why we became so profitable so soon, even though we charge we don't charge a lot of money monthly, but it's because our overhead is so low. In the old days when I started, I had to pay $80,000 a year for a woman just to have the insurance company pay me at least a little bit of what they told me they were going to pay me. So that's unsustainable. You can't. That's why medicine now, all doctors are employed by these hospital systems because of the leverage they have. The problem is that the big hospital systems are part of the cartel. They take a piece of the pie also. So it's a big problem. It's not an easy problem to solve. I think like all of us here, this is going to have to come from the patient and from doctors that listen, because since I opened my office, there's 3 other doctors that came to see how we practice, and they opened their own direct primary care. Now, I can't say that they had the layers of perspective that I have towards health, but at least you're going to have when you go to the doctor, you're going to have the doctor. You're not necessarily going to have the algorithm, because one of the beauties that this model does is that it allows time for me to spend with the patient. So every patient gets at least a half an hour with me. Where else in centralized medicine can that be set, unless you're in the operating table and and the case is 4 hours. So there is a company when I started this business, I hired it's a national company now. They're growing. They're called Freedom HealthWorks in Indiana, and they are kind of a national hub for doctors that want to start this kind of business. Now, as far as the perspective of the grounding and sunlight and all that, that's a different story. That I think I don't know how we replicate it. Maybe we can take that offline and someone has any ideas, but.
Yeah, that's kind of my next question is, it seems like the academic portion of medicine is really a big miss. And I know you talk about nutrition. It's like you never even learn about these things in medical school. Do you see any progression there at all, or any change happening? Because I feel like, maybe someone graduates high school or even in university and they want to become a doctor, and now and they understand more, they have more decentralized mindset, and it's kind of like, well, do I even go down this path? Because you're kind of just going to be taught things that you're going to perhaps later have to unlearn.
Right.
So what's your thoughts on fixing that situation, and is there any progression happening at all?
So I had so I don't know the answer to that, but I'll give you my recent perspective. So I have students come through my office. Now they don't know that the place that puts the students, they don't know that I teach this perspective necessarily, but I'm fully licensed health facility, and I do that because I want to teach young people this perspective. So every student that has come through has become a member of the practice once they see the results and how really simple it is. But when they go to other places to train, it's the same old thing. It's what is okay. So you tell me what this patient has, and what are you going to give this patient? What pill you're going to give, or what other procedure are you going to recommend? So on one end, I want to believe that things may be changing. On the other end, I'm very skeptical, because the big elephant in the room is that the medical pharmaceutical industry is $4.3 trillion a year. So that's a lot of money. And if you really look at, and it's a business, right? So what is the business model? It is to keeping us coming back for more and more pills. So, and the only way to do that is to perpetuate the status quo. So I go back to saying, well, that doesn't have to be that way. I mean, we look at it in El Salvador. Bukele changed the whole country that I thought I would never see that happen in my lifetime, ever. I lived through the Civil War, and I lived through the beginnings of the gangs, both here in the United States in San Francisco and in El Salvador. And I know what challenge that is, but he did. He changed it in 3 years. So we can change this. I mean, we have to be cognizant that even though I'm sure my profession is full of people with good intentions, but the paradigms are not always right, and there are other ways where we can skin the cat, so to speak.
Yeah, I think opting out of the system is the best way. You mentioned $4.5 trillion or so. To me, that's propping up our fiat economy, right? And we're talking a lot about Bitcoin, and fiat economy is propped up by healthcare, pharma, big tech as well, and these are the most pervasive industries that are kind of hard to tackle. But if we have alternatives, and the best part about opting out of or taking control of your health from a lifestyle perspective is it doesn't really cost that much money. It just costs your deliberate action, but then you don't have to participate in that system, and that's actually voting with your action in one sense. And then if you think about integrating Bitcoin, I'm curious on your thoughts, because I see this as such a high time preference industry. The doctors, they don't have any time to spend with their patients. They're just recommending what they're taught, what pill, what procedure to prescribe, because they don't have that low time preference mindset. And I think they're strapped for cash and cash flow through the insurance agencies and hospitals. Is that kind of how you see it? And do you think if Bitcoin had that ability to provide financial flexibility, then we could kind of change it?
Absolutely, yeah. There's no question. I mean, I tell people that I view this business model as a Bitcoin of medical delivery, healthcare delivery, because when you think about it, is the patient is investing an amount of energy and we give it back. It's what Dr. Cruz calls the most thermodynamically efficient. It's like nature. So yeah, if we can integrate I think this Bitcoin and this model would go hand in hand. Absolutely.
Are you looking to get the benefits of grounding and earthing, but really just can't be barefoot all the time? Yes, you know what I'm talking about, right? Absorbing free electrons from the earth, improving your circadian rhythm and blood flow and vitality and redox. And that is why I'm excited that this show is brought to you by Rizel Shoes. Rizel shoes are, in my awareness, the only non-sandal grounded shoes. They have slip-ons and they have cool boots as well with laces that are not only grounded via a copper plug, but have leather outsoles made with water buffalo hide. So they're all natural. They are grounded and they're barefoot and minimalist with a wide toe box. This is imperative for foot health, and it's really going to keep you connected in a modern lifestyle setting so you don't have to walk around barefoot all the time. I love them in the winter time. I can wear socks with my slip-ons and not be freezing cold trying to be grounding. You need to check them out, folks. Rizel Shoes, RHIZAL.co. Rizel.co is their website. Use code DRadio at checkout for 10% off and get your shoes, get grounded, get connected, and improve your health.
So I don't yet take Bitcoin, but I will.
Will,
Monday.
Will, you need to talk to Francisco.
Right. Yeah.
It seems to all come back to low time preference, right? Everything we're talking about here is investing now, doing the work, the proof of work now for the reaping the benefit for years to come. And I think the main issue is we've just got into these hyper, short time cycles, whether it's due to politics and fiat money, and it's only going to continue to get worse. But if we have these alternatives and we have, something to fall back on in terms of money, then that can change. Have you seen, maybe it's the last question, and then I'll open it up. Have you seen, since you started your practice, people come to you, other practitioners, other doctors, wondering what you're implementing, how you're doing it? Like, are you seeing a momentum that's building? And do you have quite a positive outlook on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So 3 other doctors have come, and they've at least 2 of them opened their own. They don't do things exactly the way I do it, but they've left the conventional system, and I think more and more, because one of the things that we clearly know that the conventional medical system is not good in many ways for the patients, but it is not any good for the doctors either. I mean, I was in my previous life I was a semi-executive of a big hospital system in Massachusetts, and let me tell you, I mean, it was. That's one of the reasons why I eventually decided, and they were paying me a lot. I mean, I walked away from a pretty paycheck. I mean, that's how they keep you, But at the end of the day, I looked at myself in the mirror after COVID. COVID was a good experience for me in that way, and I'm not going to take any of the money that I make. I'm not going to take it when I die, right? But I can definitely take the satisfaction that I've changed at least one life, and I know I've changed many lives. And that's when I made the decision. So, and I think there's a lot of doctors that particularly the older, my generation, that are kind of tired of the grind, and they're not yet ready to retire, but they want to find a different opportunity and to continue their career. And I think those are the ones that are the younger ones. My fear is that they are being taught by the algorithm and they won't know any better. So I think that's why the message needs to be out there in podcasts and social media. I'm not big in social media because I don't have time. You need to hire somebody. But I think this sort of perspective doesn't. There's a danger that it could die with the younger generations just because of how the world is going. So it's our duty to make sure that it doesn't, and that's really why I have students coming in through my office.
Amazing. All right, we'll open it up to any questions. Raise your hand.
Well, first of all, congratulations on what you do. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I have a specific question. Twice you mentioned magnetic fields, but you didn't elaborate on magnetic fields. Could you say something about that?
Sure. So we are designed to thrive on our native electromagnetic fields, right? So, and they're all we right now. This sunlight frequencies are electromagnetic. These are native. What we have created is a world with non-native electromagnetic fields, and those are the electric grid, the AC electric grid. Starting there, actually, I read a book that they said it started with a telegraph. I'm not sure about that, but and then obviously then it's grown exponentially with the advent of the cellular, the RFs. Not that they don't exist in nature, it's the amount that we're being exposed in the fact that they're out of their context, so to speak. So like blue light gets a bad rap, which is also an electromagnetic signal. It's not that blue light in itself is bad. We're getting plenty of blue light right now, but it's being balanced by red and infrared, green, violet, UV, and UVA. That's really what I meant. And then the Earth has also a magnetic flux from its rotation. So we are designed. I like to say that we are designed to get our nutrition from these electromagnetic fields, because ultimately what translates our food into energy to the mitochondria is protons and electrons programmed by photons. So even food is an electromagnetic source for our well-being. That's what I meant.
Yeah, have you faced any criticisms, any pushback from whether it be other professionals in the industry or potential patients?
Of course, I have.
What are some that stick to mind?
I mean,
like what are some of the foremost?
So I had a doctor who got pissed off because I took someone off a cholesterol pill. So okay, I mean it's not your choice. It was the patient's choice. I showed him the data of cholesterol. So we need like a year to talk about statins and cholesterol, but. And then also from insurance companies, they don't like the fact that, I get letters from the insurance company saying, well, Mr. So-and-so has diabetes and he's not on a statin. Please consider putting him on a statin. So I get the letter and I rip it off and throw it away. Yeah.
I mean, do you fear, future criticisms? I mean,
I don't
like kind of what we were saying, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that stand to lose from this knowledge base, from the lack of ailments, right? I mean, sick people are profitable.
Right, exactly. So I had the actual same question from a student this past week, because they had a class and they were talking about standards of care. So standards of care is basically which one of the two P's are you gonna use, right? So, but in every category, okay, of chronic illness, I'm talking specifically about what is killing us, which is the metabolic syndrome through diabetes, hypertension, etc. So the book always starts by saying, well, do lifestyle changes, and when they don't work, then go to the algorithm. So my profession, it's still there. I mean, it's not like it's not there. It's still there. What my profession did was forget about that sentence in the chapter, and then it went to the algorithm. So I tell her no, because you know why? If somebody can come and criticize me, somebody can come and threaten me, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just concentrating on the lifestyle piece. And if I have to use the pill, I'll use it. I have 30 years of experience. I know how to use these things. So that's the difference. I'm not dictated by an algorithm. I'm dictated by my experience and my knowledge. So if they want to come in, sure, I'll show them all the results that I have. And if they want to take my license, take it. I'm from El Salvador. I'm going back with Bukele.
Artificial blue light from technology is destroying our health. It disrupts melatonin production, sleep quality, and our circadian rhythms, which has been linked to pretty much all chronic disease. It also rewires our dopamine reward system, which makes it addictive by design. That is why I'm so thankful to have found the Daylight computer, the first company in the world making a computer that has a blue light free screen. They use paper reflective screen technology, so it's blue light free, flicker free, eye strain free, and is easily used outdoors, so you can use technology while getting the benefits of full spectrum sunlight. For more information, you can listen to our recent podcast with the founder of Daylight Computer, Anjan, on his incredibly inspiring story on why he wants to bring technology to the masses that is not detrimental to our health. You can go to buy.daylightcomputer.com/dradio to pre-order the Daylight tablet today and begin using your technology in a fashion that's way more in line with our biology and nature.
Yeah, I have a kind of a related question, which is how, since these ideas are so different from what people are used to, how do you get patients on board with what you're saying and recommending them to do? 'Cause, I mean,
Well, because it's a little bit different type of practice. So I take all comers, but I haven't done a lot of advertising or marketing. Most of the people that come looking for me or that they know about me, they're coming looking for me to get a different perspective of what they have already been told. So a lot of them come with diabetes and they don't want to take their pills or insulin. Now, the problem is that they think that I have a magic wand and I'm going to get them off the insulin in a month, and they need to understand that they need to do the work. So some people are very committed. I'm very good at explaining to them the reasons why they have hypertension. For example, I tell them, well, you have hypertension. Has your doctor told you why you have hypertension? No. He just gave me the pill. Well, would you like to know why you have hypertension? And maybe we can work and see if we can get rid of that? Yes. Okay, so let's do it. So then I do run some blood tests that are not crazy like some other practitioners. They run like $10,000 worth of tests, but I do test for a few things that mostly help me demonstrate to the patients why they have the illness or symptom that they have. So that reinforces their commitment to working and getting better. And the one thing that really I think was a game changer was the body composition scan, because the model is called STIKU, and what it does, it creates a three-dimensional representation of your body. So you're looking at yourself, it's telling you how much fat you have, where the fat is, because that is really a symptom of a dysregulated metabolism. And when we measure them month by month, without doing blood tests, when they're looking at their scan and their little avatar, they call it, is shrinking. It's like a balloon that someone put it's a low leak, it's shrinking. That's positive reinforcement. So, and then people who are diabetic, and from time to we do their blood markers, and then they're getting better. So then we can start to think about taking them off their medications. But it's a process, But that's how I do it. I demonstrate where they are. I ask them if they would like to, deal with their problem without medication or with less medications, and then they get a buy-in.
Yeah. So one question I had, which I mean, obviously we got a lot of people getting sun. I like to see it. I like to see groundedness. But one question I get often as someone that's used a lot of these principles for my own autoimmune disease and helps other people as well.
Sure.
And I'm sure you get this a ton. So it's sort of a two-part question, but they combine. One's around solar exposure, and we obviously could probably agree that solar exposure is really important and good. Mm-hmm. But someone, and I'm sure patients do this to you as well, they'll Google it, and then they're met with the complete opposite message that you just reached with them. So how do you approach someone that maybe doesn't get an abundant amount of solar exposure, doesn't have a solar callus built? How do you explain that concept to them and help them create an appropriate time duration for them to gain proper solar protection and build that? Because like you mentioned earlier, the duration for different people is going to be nuanced based on their health, state of their mitochondrial health. And right. So someone with an autoimmune disease, like you mentioned, is going to be a very different amount of stimulus to get the result than someone that maybe decently metabolically fit, maybe dealing with like one of those metabolic diseases like hypertension.
Sure. So yes. So that is the solar exposure. It's a half lie, a half truth that has become a humongous full lie, because the studies on they're talking about specifically UV light. UV and UVA light specifically, and well, UVB also. So then those studies were done in rats under blue light at night with way more UV radiation than you get from the sun. And true, they got cancer. But UV in isolation, you never get UV in isolation with the sun ever. It's always balanced by red and infrared, because red and infrared is a good guy. It gives us energy and protects us. Okay, you talked about solar callus. That's the morning red. That stimulates the melanocytes to make melanin once we're irradiated with UV. Okay, and so that's how it works. So I basically I tell them, look, I show them studies. Okay, so there was a study just done recently in Sweden where they actually wanted to show the degree of melanoma that people that got the most sun exposure would get, and they saw the opposite. They saw that they had less melanoma. They saw they died way later. They saw that they had less cardiovascular disease, and they saw all these benefits. And in fact, when they compared it to the people that got most sun exposure that smoked to the people that got less sun exposure that didn't smoke, they even did better, even if they smoked. So that I tell them that, and I try to explain. People that want to go more in the weeds, I try to explain to them the benefits of each individual frequency of light, particularly red light, because I think that is one of the major ones that they have actually subtracted when they give us this narrative. And we'll learn one of the aspects of that, a very important aspect, a little later today. But and then when I just kind of like everybody's an individual. I really haven't had that much problem really selling the idea that the sun is good, because I guess a lot of my patients, a lot of them are Hispanic, so they kind of like know that whenever they go back to like the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or El Salvador, they feel better automatically. So I explain to them why that is. But even if you're not Hispanic, I mean, you kind of feel better in the sun. So how can something so? And then the other thing is, if there's no sun, there is no light. I mean, so no life. So how come something so vital to life can be that bad? I mean, this doesn't make logical sense.
In terms of like food nutrition, there's everything under the sun, from like being a vegetarian to being a carnivore. Where do you fall in terms of like, what do you advise your patients?
I mean, it depends. I mean, if for someone who doesn't have any chronic illness like diabetes, I just say eat in a circadian way, and in season, and eat something that is grown by the earth, by the sun and the earth, basically. If you have diabetes, then definitely I would go a little bit more high fat, medium protein, more meat based, and a lot less of these simple carbohydrates, and more vegetables, because that's what the data suggests. But also look at the circadian your circadian way of eating. I don't recommend any specific kind of diet. I just recommend things to do based on the situation. But I want to make the point clear, though, that I think diet is important, but I think it's a little bit lower on the list. I think the grounding, the sunlight, the water, that's the most important. That's the base. That's the most important.
I wanted to ask, since you were talking about the benefits of the sun, what do you think about sunscreen?
Don't use it. Absolutely. Not only because you're blocking actually very specific frequencies of light, but also it's been shown, depending on the sunscreen, that can be potentially carcinogenic. Some.
Okay. I don't know if this is right.
Any more questions? Awesome. Give it up for Dr. Gutierrez.
Thank you.